Welcome to Raaonline. In today's module, we will be talking about complications of otitis media. In the previous module, we had seen about the different types of otitis media, basically the NCCOM or the non-cholesteatomatous otitis media and the cholesteatomatous otitis media. And if left untreated, we find that they can go in for complications. So, though the presentation of both cholesteatomatous otitis media and the non-cholesteatomatous otitis media are different, in complications wise, they face the same complications, but the rate of complications or the severity of complications with respect to diseases with cholesteatoma definitely more than what we see in non-cholesteatomatous otitis media. So, let us see. So, complications can be divided into different parts depending on where the infection or becomes more or where the complications arise. So, we can call them as two complications within the temporal bone, which will include mastoiditis, necrosis of the ossicles or infection of the petrous part of the temporal bone or the petrositis, involvement of the labyrinth, either with a labyrinthitis or a labyrinthine fistula, and facial nerve palsy. Now, some of these are possibilities in cholesteatomatous otitis media, whereas some of these are in non-cholesteatomatous also. We can have intracranial complications, where we can have a subdural abscess, a brain abscess, and we can have a cavernous sinus thrombosis if a petrous infection extends into the cavernous sinus. Then you can have otic hydrocephalus, then you can have a extradural abscess and also meningitis. So, we will be talking about all of these later. We can also have extracranial complications. When the infection from the mastoid bone goes into crosses the tegmen and goes into the brain, we get intracranial. Whereas, if it goes into crosses the subperiosteum and goes into the surrounding soft tissue, we get extracranial complication. The most common ones are Bezold's abscess. Then we have the postauricular abscess. Then we can have facial nerve involvement or facial neuritis, zygomatic abscess and Citelli's abscess. So, we will talk about each of these. So, you can see how the infection spreads. So, from the mastoid bone or the infection, you can have an acute infection spreading into the bone, and when any of these bony margins are breached, which is basically the tegmen tympani and the sigmoid prominence, any of these gets breached, we can get into a intracranial or an extracranial complication. So, we can get a zygomatic abscess. If it breaches the tegmen, we can get into a subdural abscess, and if it breaches the dura, we can go in for a temporal lobe abscess, and if there is a dehiscence of the erosion of the labyrinth, we go in for a suppurative labyrinthitis and a epidural abscess. And if it involves the lateral sinus, we get a lateral sinus thrombosis, or if it involves the sigmoid sinus, we get a sigmoid sinus thrombosis. Once it breaches the mastoid bone, it can get into the bloodstream, leading to sepsis, systemic sepsis, which can then lead to ARDS, or it can lead to resistant hyperglycemia, ultimately leading to death. So, the idea is to prevent complications from happening and try to, if complications happen, try to prevent it at each step possible.